Tide marking and man marking. Which one to use, in which players to mark or tide mark, and the most common formation that you face most of the time. Now, after a lot of experiments and ranked matches, and I had a discussion with a lot of top 100 players and some pros, I'd like to share what I came up with in tide marking or man marking, especially tide marking, can absolutely change your game. Before we dive into this video, I'd like to share the sponsor of this video. Please check it out. It will help the channel. Soccerato's very affordable football jerseys, whether it's retro, modern, club, or national, offers free shipping and a customization of number and t-shirt. And even if you don't want a logo in the chest, I personally ordered this one as a Cristiano Ronaldo version, fan version for sporting. Now, as you can see, they have at the top right, you can choose your currency, and of course they've got the retro, the nation, the club, training one, a variation of everything. And of course, if you visit this website on using my link on the description below, and on the checkout you can use code PESEP, you will get 10% off. So check out the link on the description, have a visit, it will support the channel. And if you decide to purchase anything, use code PESEP10. For instance, I'm a fan of R9, as most of you know, as a retro kit for Inter Milan. Looks pretty solid and the quality is really good. I mean, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to take this off and show you. Now, here you can see the quality of the kits. I'm going to zoom in. And honestly, guys, as I said, I'm a user myself. So the quality is pretty good for the price. That's what I can tell you. So please, if you want to help out the channel for free, check the link in the description, have a browse, and if you decided to purchase anything, don't forget to use my coupon PESEP at the checkout. Now, of course, they have deals if you want to buy 2 or 3 more, and you pick the size and you customize it with your name and number if you wish, whether you wear the shirt at home or wear your shirt outside or you play football with it, that just depends. And of course, in the description, here's a material and free shipping worldwide. And their customer service was really fast when I ordered one myself, this one. So, once you pick your size, whether you want to customize or not, no customization, let's say, and you click on buy now, and then it will take you to a section here. You log in, and all you have to do from here, enter your coupon. Enter your coupon right above there, and use my code PESEP. Use coupon, boom, you get 10% discount off your order. Make sure to check the link in the description below. And of course, they have deals and special offers available most of the time. Alrighty, back to the video. Now, if you already know the difference between tide marking and man marking, you can skip to the next part about which position you should mark facing the most common formations. Now, as you can see in the description here, it tells you exactly the difference between tide marking and man marking. In short, with tide marking, you don't pick a specific player of yours. With the man marking, you pick a particular player of yours to mark. Now, ideally, because a lot of people use sub-tactic, I recommend tide marking. So even if he switches the player, it's not gonna massively impact it. For instance, if you man mark Messi, who plays on the wing, with your fullback, and the guy switches to sub-tactic or changes Messi into attacking midfielder, and your fullback is marking him, your fullback ends up playing like a DMF, coming short, coming in the middle, and it's gonna mess up your defensive shape. But if you were using tide marking, even if he switches Messi from a winger to AMF, your DMF starts marking Messi instead of your fullback. Now, of course, there's a lot of factors and variables and situations where how your opponent plays, how often he switches, or the extreme of position changes he's gonna do. And in my opinion, you should know when you should stop using tide marking and when you should use tide marking. Ideally is the percentage. If I see somebody, when I pause the game in the screen where it shows the percentage of opponent played in which side, if I see close to 50% on one particular side, I would definitely tide mark 100%. But if I see more than 50% on one particular side, probably I will use man marking. But you have to be careful in case he switches. So ideally the tide marking will work the best. And obviously players who has the man marking skill would help. Now here's an example of me tide marking the opposition's wingers. As you can see how Maldini, in my other fullback, presses to make sure to tide mark those wingers. Now you have to understand, some players you face, they might be smart enough to take that as an advantage to them. They realize their wingers are marked, they will simply hold the ball, wait for a space in the middle, since your fullback is going to spread out. So you have to recognize when tight marking is working against particular opponent or the setup. Now let's talk about the important part, which positions you should tight mark when you face the most common formations. Let's start with the most common one you probably face at the moment eFootball 25, which is in November. You probably will face this kind of setup. Whether it's narrow meta 3 strikers or wide wingers, I think generally speaking, you will probably face something like this very often. Like just a default 4-2-1-3. You probably face something like that very, very often. And ideally, you should tight mark Messi and Neymar. It's that simple. If I face a formation with a default 4-2-1-3 or flat, tight mark Messi and Neymar. It's very rare that somebody will use a formation like this with their fullbacks overlapping, okay? If the fullback overlaps, it will mess up your marking because you're gonna get doubled on that side. And I'll be honest, most try-hard people who are in top 500, top 1000, they will hardly use attacking fullbacks. And the ones who do, they're not really try-hard. They're just there to play the game rather than beat the game. So be careful. The only time that tight marking will cause you problem if somebody has this fullback overlap in which it doubles up. And these are situations where you should know when to stop using man-mark tight marking and when you should be more aggressive and pressing with your fullback than sitting back. If you guys like more details, depending if you guys like more details when you should and should not do what and when, then we can make a second part of this video about much more details. If you guys show some love to this video, we'll do that. Secondly, if you face something like this, again, I will tight mark Messi and Neymar. And the second most common formation you probably face nowadays, it's a diamond, something like this, or probably pushing this up. Then in this case, I will tight mark 2 striker. But if it's a diamond like this, a classic diamond, then the 2 side CMFs, in this case Nedved and Steven Gerrard, will make more dangerous late runs into the box. It really depends what type of player you're playing. As I said, people most of the time, their assist to score, it's always done by strikers. That's why they give strikers to the passing. It's very rare somebody who actually plays the game and their assist to score will be by fullbacks or midfield. A lot of time if I see a diamond like this and if he has good passers and speed and finishers as a CMF, like in this case, if I was facing this, I'll probably most likely tight mark Nedved and Gerrard because they will make those late runs that will mess up my defensive shape in a way. But generally speaking, yeah, tight mark 2 strikers. It's a situation and depends what type of player you face. Another most common formation you face is something like this. Whether it's shaped like this or it's shaped like this in a way, tight mark 2 strikers. It's that simple in my opinion. If you face 4-4-2 flat with LMF and RMF, I'll be honest, against a subformation like this, of course, again, I am going to man-mark Messi and Eto'o. However, if sometime you face people who actually uses 4-4-2 properly, meaning he's gonna switch the ball often from this side to the other. He's gonna overload one side and switch to the other side. What did I just draw? A lot of time when I face a formation like this and the guy is on the lead, all he does switches the ball. Create an overload here and then switch back to the other side. Messing up my defensive shape. And it could be really annoying. You just watch this guy switch to the side, then switch to the other side. So you have to decide, am I going to man mark at least one of the side mids or both? It depends how he attacks because people, as I said, there's a difference between you playing the game and beating the game. Beating the game is pretty much meta and most people do that and top even 500 and above. And occasionally you face people who actually plays the game properly because in 4-4-2 system, if you don't involve your LMF and RMF, then there's no point for that formation. A lot of people just use them as a decoy to pull your center back and fullback and keep your midfield occupied while the focus is always a 1-2 between the 2 strikers. So generally speaking, again, 2 striker formation, tight mark both. Winger formations, tight mark both. Even 3 strikers narrow, tight mark the both flanks. In a very rare occasion when somebody only spams one particular player, or let's say you are facing somebody who's a crosser, let's say he's using a formation like I call it a lot of times as the symmetric. Obviously, I have Beckham on the side. The idea of this formation, it's very simple. Beckham overloads to this side, crosses. You got him, who's very good with headers. Cruyff is exceptionally okay. And Karl-Heinz. And if these guys fails, you got Holland overlapping. So as obvious as it seems, probably my opponent will just tight mark Beckham in a way. But I always have a backup in a sense. I always have a sub-tactic in this instant. Just drop in Beckham, pull that fullback, creates more space for whole player Holland to overlap, and so on. Or I can simply make my sub-tactic. I can put Beckham over here, play a normal 4-3-3 flat in a sense, and I can use Beckham as a finisher instead of the playmaker in a sense. And that could mess him up. So if that guy was using man marking with Beckham, his fullback is going to come all the way to the midfield. But if he was using tight marking, then probably his DMF will start marking Beckham. So when you face somebody who's a crosser, let's say you're facing somebody with a good crosser, and he's got Kohler, he's got bullet header Cristiano, bullet header Weghorst, and so on, you have a better chance of stopping the cross than being able to stop the header. Because if he has very tall players with bullet heading, physically strong than you, even if you super cancel getting in front of a player on the header, that requires more skills. And number two, you have to have a smooth match, and that is very rare for you to be able to quickly, as soon as the cross leaves, for you to super cancel and trying to stop that header. So ideally, your job is just to stop Beckham. Tight mark him, man mark him, create an overload. When you get him on the flank, double up on him, and so on. And obviously the best way to stop a cross, you just use matchup, time it to the ball, so your player will do that contextual block. A lot of time players don't do that. It's fishy. So that's it about tight marking and man marking, and ideally tight marking that I would recommend. Comment down below what you prefer normally. Do you use tight marking? Do you use man marking? Why you choose which one, and how effective has been for you to use tight marking in most of your matches. And I get it, there's a lot of people who never use tight marking or marking and they're still doing fine. It could be a personal preference as well. But when you see a very high percentage of somebody spamming one particular side, I think ideally is to mark. Generally speaking, in certain patches, remember guys, a lot of times they nerf and buff certain skill or an ability that will impact your player performance. Therefore, it will impact how you play, and it will impact your formation and your team collectively. It's like they give us an illusion of something has changed. And you have to be smart enough to figure out what has changed and how can you retrain your player or change the way you play, and so on. So when it comes to the game, sometimes they change certain things and it could be a little bit more difficult. Like I remember one particular patch, me using tight marking on man marking wasn't really that effective. A lot of times when you are using tight marking, it could actually mess up your defensive shape so badly. So you have to figure out or realize when you should stop using it. The same thing with deep laying forward. A lot of time if I face 4-2-4, I don't want to get outnumbered in the defense, so I use deep line on my DMF. But that deep line sometimes sitting too deep or making my center back's reaction a little bit less more comfortable because the deep line is on DMF. The deep line comes back, the center backs are like comfortable, they're not pressing. This could be good against people who are smart enough to be patient enough to find any gaps in your team and they will punish you for it. But people who play direct and spammy, that could work. But a lot of times even using deep line on your DMF can really mess you up. And again, if you guys show some love to this video, next part we'll talk about when you should use and not use tight marking in situations and scenarios when you need to know that tight marking has been effective or is messing you up. And there are many examples of when you should and should not use it and how you could learn to figure out the problem and recognizing the problems. Till next time.